The Times Live journalist Mawande Amashabalala made a statement to the fact that, distorting what I said, that I was taking a swipe at Comrade Lady Nzimande, the General Secretary of the party. That is not true, comrades. I never made a general statement to the fact that everybody should step down. I was thinking about myself and my niece. I have heard the Comrade Blade. I have no reason to believe that he should live with me, although I am older than him in terms of age. He is still young. So please, comrades, let's not distort what I said. If you wanted clarity, you could have called me to come forward and do that clarity, comrades. We want a progressive, vibrant Congress that must live more united than before. There are more battles to fight, but we don't need a division created. And we respect the right of journalists. They should interview us where they need clarity than for them to make themselves prophets to come up with other views of which we have not said. Comrades, with that said, comrades, I will therefore call upon the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Comrade Blade Nzimande, to come and introduce the next speaker. Thank you very much, comrades. Comrades, can we stop the process of distributing documents up until the next speaker has spoken? Thank you very much.
Yes. Amandla! Viva the South African Communist Party, viva! Mawakula makomanisi, mawakule! Awaqina makomanisi, mawaqine! Mawabe ne discipline, amabofu, mawabe ne discipline! Forward to socialism, forward! Viva the African National Congress, viva! Viva the ANC, viva! Viva COSATU, viva! Viva the YCL Ufasimba, viva! Amandla! Comrades, thank you very much. Chair, we should also thank Comrade Slava for a very good lesson contributing to our understanding of the conflict in Ukraine. That's how we characterize it here in South Africa correctly. Thank you very much for that, Chair, and Comrade Slava. Comrades, I have got a simple but very important task to do. To firstly officially welcome the President of the African National Congress, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa. Let's give him a very warm welcome, comrades. The President of the ANC, let me do my job first. Sorry about that, Makaban. The President of the ANC, as well as the President of the Republic of South Africa. Comrade President, let me, on behalf of this 15th National Congress, I'm left now with a few hours as General Secretary of the SACP. So at least the delegates are kind to allow me to perform these duties till this time. This is the 15th Congress of the South African Communist Party, which has got a total of about 600 participants, but with voting delegates of 400. It's a smaller Congress. We can afford that than other organizations that I won't mention. to have a smaller Congress. It's a very disciplined Congress, which is focusing on the priorities that are facing our revolution. We must say we appreciate the fact that you have indeed set aside time so that you can come and deliver yourself personally as the president the message of our glorious movement, the African National Congress. Comrades, the president needs no introduction. We know him very well. A former trade unionist who played a very critical role, by the way, in the formation of COSATU. And if truth be told, one of the catalysts to the formation of COSATU was the NUM taking a position to associate itself with the Congress movement and become a founding main union of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, led by Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa. So he understands these red colors. We are glad that it's him who is actually going to come and address us, President. And comrades, let's give him an ear, because this is a very important message from our ally. The other day, President, we got a message from the president of COSATU, our other ally. Today it is your turn, and you are most welcome at this Congress. Mongameli, over to you. Amandla. Viva South African Communist Party, viva. Viva. Viva COSATU, viva. Viva. Viva African National Congress, viva. Viva. Amandla. Comrade Chairperson of the South African Communist Party, Comrade Zokwana, the General Secretary of the SACP, Comrade Blade Zimande, members of the Central Committee of the SACP, the leadership of the Alliance who are here. I saw the National Chairperson of the African National Congress and a number of National Executive Committee members. I
haven't seen the leadership of COSATU, but they are here. I can see the leaders of COSATU. Veterans and stalwarts of our movement, delegates who have come from far and afield. Comrade Blade was whispering to me that we have amongst us up to 40 fraternal organizations that have come from across the world. This is a phenomenal attendance, and I'd like to welcome you to South African soil and thank you for coming. And I extend my greetings to all delegates and comrades who are here. Let me start off by saying that on behalf of the entire membership and leadership of the African National Congress, I bring you warm, fraternal and revolutionary greetings. Warm greetings even in winter, so that you can feel warm, even though you are wearing all red. But the greetings from the ANC will make you even warmer. So we extend those greetings to you. The bonds that have joined the ANC and the SACP together in common struggle over many decades are as valued and as important as they've ever been. The party has grown in membership, it has also grown in strength, and indeed it has also grown in influence. We applaud you because by growing the party, you have contributed to strengthening the democratic, progressive movement in our country. General Secretary Nzimande, I believe, as you have also said, this is your last Congress as General Secretary, left with a few hours. I think you are to be applauded for continuing to lead the party over the many years and to have seen it grow into the organization that it is today. I take off my hat to you and applaud you for the excellent work that you have done. There are times when some would have said that you appeared mad, but there were many times when you're quite effective, as you continue to be, ensuring that the message of communists in our country is spread around effectively. And we thank you, and indeed the entire leadership of the party, for having made sure that the party remains strong, even during trying times. Even at the darkest moments of our struggle, even during turbulent times, this revolutionary alliance has stood firm and remained resolute in pursuit of our shared program, which is the National Democratic Revolution. As many have called for the dissolution of the alliance, as many have called it an outdated and irrelevant alliance, we have continued to work together to advance the interests of the people of South Africa, in particular the poor and the working class. The ANC and the SACP have had a tightly interwoven relationship which spans many decades, and we remain firmly committed to our alliance with the SACP, and we remain convinced that the role of the SACP in advancing the fundamental transformation of our economy and our society is very key to the future of our country. As a movement, we fully support the determination of the SACP to build a powerful socialist movement of workers and the poor. We recognize, however, that it is not enough to state our commitment to this alliance. We need to work for it. We need to work hard, and we need to continuously ensure that this movement remains united, cohesive, and effective. We recognize that there have been weaknesses. There have also been lapses and shortcomings in how we have managed this relationship and how we have approached the common tasks and responsibilities that are at hand. At times, our structures, both at national, that is alliance structures, at provincial and at regional level, have not worked as they should have. And certainly in the recent months, our structures at national level have not worked as well as they should have not responded to the challenges that our movement faces. Among other things, the discussion, for instance, about the reconfiguration of the alliance is something that needs to be concluded so that we have an alliance that is suited to the conditions and the tasks of the present. I can say that as president of the ANC, I do support that we should have a thoroughgoing discussion on the reconfiguration of the alliance. We must discuss in depth precisely what our roles, what our responsibilities are as we chart the way forward. So we are going to devote time to conclude that discussion. It has started, but I know that it is causing a great deal of anxiety, both within the party and COSATU, that the African National Congress has not fully concluded its own discussions. We will make sure that we hasten this so that when the Alliance Political Council meets, we are able to finalize our discussions on the reconfigured alliance. It must be an alliance that is able to develop a common view on crucial areas of social and economic development, including on questions such as the form and the content of the social compact that we've been talking about. I listened very carefully to you, Nobala, as you were presenting your political report yesterday, and you said that the very first compact that we crafted, not only as a movement but as a people, was our constitution. And we therefore need to use that template to build on another compact, a compact which should be comprehensive. And if it has to be built to be a comprehensive compact, it needs to have key highlights and elements that can enable that compact to have pillars. So we need to finalize those pillars of a compact, and we expect that the SACP will participate with us as we finalize an overarching compact that should be able to take this country forward. The challenges that have beset the ANC in recent times have also manifested themselves within the alliance and have at times contributed to some of the challenges experienced by our alliance partners, both the SACP and COSATU. Much as we have had these challenges, at times you have lesser challenges. For instance, Comrade Soli Mapaile was telling me, I was asking him whether you were able to adopt your credentials easily, because the current experience is as we hold conferences, both at ANC level, union conferences and so forth, the Congress movement seems to be beset by huge problems of even adopting credentials. Comrade Soli boastfully says to me, and boastfully, underline boastfully, he boastfully says to me, we adopted our credentials in less than 15 minutes. So I applaud you. I know we boast amakomanis from time to time when you engage with them. But that's a wonderful boast, because this is precisely what we want to see. We want to see high discipline in our structures, organizational structures, and we want to see high discipline in our movement more broadly. So much as we are beset by many problems, we are proud and pleased that the party has demonstrated that it is able to overcome many, many challenges and problems that a number of our Congress movement structures are going through. We have a shared interest in the state of each other's organization. The SACP has a profound interest and must have a profound interest in the renewal and the revitalization of the African National Congress. And by the same measure, the ANC has an interest in an SACP that has the organizational coherence and the capacity to advance its policies and programs and to be an unfailing champion of the working people and the poor in our country. Yes, we also have an interest in the organizational integrity of COSATU as well, and have been able to demonstrate that when COSATU itself had its own challenges. We therefore come to this Congress to state our determination as the African National Congress to support the SACP and to build the alliance. We come to this Congress to ask the membership and the leadership of the SACP to actively support, but more importantly, to be actively involved as members of the ANC in the renewal and the rebuilding process of the African National Congress. So you are not to be spectators. You are not to be bystanders. You are not to be onlookers. You are not to be just like neighbors. I call upon you to be actively involved, because the task of renewing and rebuilding the ANC should be seen as our collective task. Your Congress, Comrade Zokwan, is taking place at a difficult time for our country. The accumulated legacy of colonialism and apartheid has been compounded by the effects of state capture and corruption, by the devastating effect of COVID-19 pandemic, and by an energy crisis that has lasted for well over more than 15 years, and also by the global instability that the world is going through. Our people right now are suffering. Our people have huge burdens on their shoulders. They are suffering from massive job losses as a result of the pandemic and the public violence and destruction in July last year. They are suffering from the rising cost of living, which is mainly driven by the rise of food prices and fuel due to, in part, the conflict in the Ukraine, the effects of climate change and the disruptions of the global supply chains. Our people are suffering from persistent load shedding, which not only causes great inconvenience to households, to the lives of individual South Africans, and to businesses, and to various institutions of learning and otherwise. But this is what is holding the growth and recovery of our economy back. our people are also suffering from the daily threat of violent crime and gangsterism, fueled by deteriorating social and economic conditions that prevail in our country today. Yet while several disastrous events have actually conspired in recent years to worsen conditions under which South Africans live, the underlying problem is that over almost 30 years of freedom, we have not done enough to transform our economy and our society. We have not done enough to tackle extreme inequality of our apartheid and colonial past, which continues to divide our society by race, gender, class, and regional origin. Since the advent of democracy, we have made significant and undeniable progress in responding to the basic needs of our people. That cannot be denied. We've done this through the provision of housing, water, sanitation, electricity, healthcare, education, grants, as well as social infrastructure. However, despite this progress, inequality continues to stalk our people. Inequality continues as a defining feature of our society. We see this inequality manifested in areas such as access to skills, healthcare, security, land, productive assets, employment, and other economic opportunities. It is to overcome these social and economic conditions that we continue to work to advance the National Democratic Revolution, our common program. The NDR is, after all, the reason for the very existence of our alliance and why we are determined to build and to strengthen the broader democratic movement. So if we are to make any progress, we need to fundamentally come up with ideas, proposals, initiatives, and various thoughts to change the structure, the purpose, and the way in which our economy operates. We need to ensure, as the Freedom Charter declares, that the people shall share in the country's wealth. We all agree that the people of our country do not all share in the wealth of our country as set out in the Freedom Charter. As currently structured, the economy does not allow all of our people to share in the wealth of the country. A number of observers, and some from quarters that you would never have even suspected, who have analyzed our economy, tells us that some of the impediments that stand in the way of inclusive participation and growth in our economy are the high levels of concentration of ownership and control of our economy by a few. And some of these are institutions such as the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, who, when they have looked at our economy over a number of years, have said, your economy is just too concentrated in terms of ownership, in terms of control. Although the management of the economy, there are some movements there, but certainly not sufficient yet. The spatial architecture of our country and the skills misalignment contribute a great deal as one of those factors that impede the growth of our economy. And one of the consistent objectives of our alliance since the adoption of the Freedom Charter is to address this issue of the concentration of our economy. Following the adoption of our Freedom Charter, our movement went to Morogoro. And in Morogoro, the issue of the concentration of ownership of the economy was raised prominently, and it was characterized as a monopoly control of our economy. And this has persisted ever since. Even at Morogoro, where some of the people who did the proper analysis, like leading communists in our movement, came up with the correct analysis, but ever since then, we never came up with proposals, with ways of how to deconcentrate the economy of our country. Now, Comrade General Secretary, for a few hours that are left in your participation as General Secretary, the key issue that should confront this conference is to debate precisely this issue, because now it has become very clear over the 30-year period that the African National Congress has been the governing party, leading the alliance in doing so. Our economy has not grown at the levels that we would want it to grow, to be able to absorb the unemployed people who continue to rise year after year after year. We need to ask ourselves precisely what is the cause of this. Is the concentration ownership of our country one of the reasons? Is it the skills problem? Is it the spatial architecture? What is it? And I'm sure as communists, as always, you will have a plethora of ideas and suggestions, and I would want to see that coming to the fore, because it is from the SACP that we have been able in the past to get great ideas of how we should move our struggle forward. While progress has been made in bringing new entrants into several areas of the economy, the issue of concentration and monopoly control remains unresolved, as I said. Today, monopolies continue to hold back growth and development. They stifle competition, they inflate prices and continue to exclude millions of South Africans from economic opportunity. While we are committed to dismantling and broaden these monopolies and broadening control and ownership of the economy, we have not sufficiently developed the instruments to do so. This Congress should be able to come up with some of those thoughts and some of those ideas. We have been strong on analysis and theory, but weak on implementation. We have strengthened our competition laws and have become more assertive in using them to open up key economic sectors of our economy. We must remember that the Competition Act itself states that through greater competition, it aims to promote greater spread of ownership in the economy, in particular to increase the ownership stakes of historically disadvantaged people. A significant development in the application of our competition policies has been the greater use of employee share ownership schemes as a vehicle for empowerment. And the party does need to reflect on this, because this development has not come without a great deal of criticism from a number of quarters. We need to draw on the experiences that we have had in a concerted drive towards greater worker ownership in companies, giving them a stake in the viability and the sustainability of the businesses that they work for. As a democratic government, we've introduced programs such as the Black Industrialist Program to fund the new entrants into the economy as owners and controllers. We have significantly expanded access to education and skills development, which is essential for any effort to enable greater access to economic opportunities. We have undertaken a program of land reform, which has seen over 9 million hectares of agricultural land transferred through restitution and redistribution. But we all know that that is not enough. We have not yet produced in detail a comprehensive program to end the control of a few in the economy of our country and advance with greater urgency the purpose towards the vision of the Freedom Charter. At this moment in our history, this must be the central and overriding task of our revolutionary alliance. In undertaking this work, comrades, we must use every resource and every lever at our disposal to drive inclusive growth. Now, as we grapple with the challenge of economic transformation, we should also reflect on the strategy and tactics document that was adopted at Morogoro in 1969, when we said, we do not underestimate the complexity which will face a people's government during the transformation period, nor the enormity of the problems of meeting economic needs of the masses of our people. But one thing the document continued to say is certain. In our land, this cannot be effectively tackled unless the basic wealth and the basic resources are at the disposal of the people as a whole and are not manipulated by sections of individuals, be they black or white, close quotes. Now more than ever before, more than half a century after Morogoro, we have a much clearer sense of the complexities as well as challenges of meeting the economic needs of our people. We also have a clearer sense of what needs to be done to overcome these challenges and build the society that was envisaged by the Freedom Charter. What is certain is that we will only be able to successfully undertake these tasks if we are, as an alliance, united in purpose and in action. The party and COSATU have called for a summit to discuss the economy and energy. And I support that, and I would like to see that held as soon as possible so that all of us can benefit from the insights and knowledge and wisdom. So let us have that summit as quickly as possible, because a lot is at stake right now. The summit must also primarily focus on how we can generate growth that creates employment, growth that allows cooperatives, that allows SMMEs and informal businesses to emerge and expand, that enables the expansion of social protection to the poor and vulnerable, and that promotes more effective economic empowerment of Black South Africans and women and young people. Yes, at that summit, we must discuss issues of even the basic income grant. We must discuss issues of how we deconcentrate the ownership of our economy. That time, in my view, has now arrived, and the alliance must sit down and have those very deep, thoroughgoing discussions without any fear, without holding back. In determining the respective roles and responsibilities of the public and private sectors, we should draw guidance from Ready to Govern document of 1992, which sets out policy guidelines for a democratic South Africa. During the summit, we should reflect on what we set out in 1992 and see whether it is still relevant. The Ready to Govern document envisaged a democratic state with ultimate responsibility for coordinating, planning, and guiding the development of the economy towards sustainable growth in cooperation with the trade union movement, with business and other organs of society. It spoke of the need for economic policy that democratizes the economy and creates productive employment opportunities at a living wage for all South Africans. The document envisaged a dynamic private sector employing the skills and acumen of all South Africans and of business activities which contribute significantly to job creation being actively encouraged. There are some that have urged us to make a choice between a developmental state that drives economic and social transformation and a vibrant, expanding private sector that fuels growth and employment. Just as we recognize the role of business in creating employment, we should not diminish, yes, the central role of the state in coordinating, in planning, in guiding, in enabling the development of the economy, and yes, in setting up companies, state-owned enterprises, through which it will foster the employment of our people. That is what we would want to see the state doing. We need, therefore, comrades, a strong, capable, and developmental state with a public sector which has a dynamic and agile private sector that work together and complement each other. Yet, if the state is to effectively support growth and development as envisaged in Ready to Govern, then it needs to have sufficient capital, skills, and must highlight the use of technology as one of the key enablers in the modern times. It needs to be efficient, it also needs to be innovative, but it also needs to be competitive. Even if we will have state entities competing against each other. For instance, Comrade Gwede Mantashe, in dealing with this problem of energy, has said, President, why don't we set up another state-owned entity so that we lessen our risks just as they are exposed in one entity? And I've said, I agree with him, because the state must continue to play a key role, but I'll come back to that. Unfortunately, many of our state-owned enterprises do not exhibit the features that I'm talking about. There are various reasons for this, including policy missteps, poor management, state capture, corruption, and a failure to adapt to changing technology and market conditions as well. That is why we have embarked on an overhaul of our state-owned enterprise landscape to promote greater accountability, oversight, as well as competitiveness. It is why we have embarked on the reforms in key network industries, including energy, telecoms, water, rail, and transport. These measures aim to improve efficiency, introduce new technology, mobilize greater investment from both public and private sources, and introduce competition where this would support our developmental objectives. As we undertake these reforms, we remain firm on our position that strategic state-owned enterprises must remain in public hands if they are to drive growth, transformation, and development. Now, there's always this notion, as we try to restructure some of these state-owned enterprises, accusations are thrown around that what we are seeking to do is to privatize some of these state-owned enterprises so that we can sell them cheap to so and so and so and so. That is a lie. We are not, through restructuring, seeking to privatize. In fact, we are trying to modernize and ensure that the state continues to play its role, its given role in ensuring that these state-owned enterprises function well. Now, as we undertake these reforms, comrades, we want to pursue a developmental agenda. The reforms we are undertaking in the energy sector provide a good illustration of the approach that we need to take. Our national utility, ESCOM, has not only been in a state of distress, not only for the past 3 years or 4 years, it's been in distress for easily 15 years. But it has been operating according to a model that is no longer suited to the technology or the economic conditions of the present. For the past 100 years, ESCOM has operated as a monopoly, as a single company responsible for the electricity generation, transmission, and distribution. And I always give an analogy to many people that if you are to fly from OR Tambo to Cape Town at night, or Cape Town to OR Tambo at night, you just look at the splendor of the wonderful lights that adorn our country, from the north to the south, from the east to the west. And if you sit back and you ask yourself, where is this generated from? And then you reflect on the fact that it is generated by one company. One company which, if it fails, becomes a spectacular calamity for the entire country. Now, that is the risk that we have. If we look at other countries, like China, for instance, it has a number of state-owned electricity generating companies that even compete amongst themselves to even bring prices down. And that is a future that I think we should begin to imagine. That yes, we should reduce the risk that the country could be exposed to. Like right now, we are exposed to a monumental risk because the one company that has been generating electricity for 100 years, with power stations that are more than 50 years. I was saying to Comrade Gwede the other day, when we started organizing mine workers in 1982 and organizing the mines and the power stations, some of those power stations, Comrade Zogwana will remember, were already 30, 40 years old. With the NUM being 30 years old, is it 40 years now? 40 years old today. You can look at the power stations that are so aged and that continue to pump electricity, and that in part is part of the weakness and the risk. For much of its history, this model that we have pursued has worked, but we are today witnessing the great risks associated with placing sole responsibility for electricity generation in one company. And that is why when Comrade Gwede flighted the idea of saying, why not a second one, which can be owned by the government? And I said, I think that's not a bad idea. When ESCOM fails, the country is thrown into darkness, as we are now. That is why we have embarked on a process to establish all these three entities, to separate generation, distribution, as well as transmission. And that is why we've also brought in the generation of energy from solar and from wind. And it is why we have increased the licensing threshold as well for those who would want to generate to be a little higher than what it has always been. Not only are these measures, comrades, intended to address the current shortfall in electricity, but they are also intended to enable Eskom to improve its own financial position and operational performance and become a far more competitive provider of electricity. In the coming days, we will be announcing additional measures that we need to take to address the current electricity crisis by coming up with new ideas of bringing new generation capacity online. The severe economic and social impact of load shedding means that we have to use every available means and remove every regulatory obstacle to bring extra electricity onto the grid as soon as possible. The transformation of the economy must take place alongside and in support of urgent measures that we need to take to create employment and support livelihoods. Now, as the economic effects of COVID-19 took effect, we acted quickly to lessen the impact on the poor and the vulnerable. The other day I said, and a journalist asked, where do I get the figures? I said, within a period of a year and 18 months, we had lost 2 million jobs. And I said, well, apart from getting it from Stats SA, you actually see it in the streets of our townships, in the pathways of our villages. You actually see that COVID-19 has wreaked havoc in the way that it has destroyed jobs. In April 2020, we introduced the largest social and economic relief package in our history as a country. This provided cash directly to the poorest households, wage support to workers, and various forms of relief to struggling businesses. As a result, many jobs were saved, many businesses were kept afloat, and millions of households were kept out of dire poverty. Some measures, like the 350 Social Relief of Distress grant, remain in place, although there are still some issues and challenges that we have to solve in that regard. But they have reached 10 million South Africans, which is quite historic in our country within a short space of time. This is happening alongside measures that we have taken to promote employment, like the presidential employment stimulus, which has provided work, comrades, and livelihood opportunities to around 880,000 people since it was started. The presidential employment stimulus, and a number of people now go around, as Comrade Blade was telling me when he went to Bloemfontein, are now calling it the PESI. The PESI is a good example of an effective state intervention that responds to the immediate problem of unemployment while the job market takes time to recover from the pandemic. This employment stimulus program, and there are quite a few of them, are not simply about providing unemployed people with an income. They are making a real contribution to social and economic development in our country. The good part of it is the school assistance program, which has given 600,000 young people experience and opportunities while adding significant value to schools in which they have been working. School governing bodies, teachers, principals have welcomed this initiative and want to see it continuing, because it has brought young people who would ordinarily not have found work into the work environment, and it has given them a great deal of experience. And as part of the presidential stimulus program, vouchers have been given to nearly 70,000 smallholder farmers for agricultural inputs. And this has reportedly brought tens of thousands of hectares of fallow land into production, boosting agriculture output at a time of growing global food insecurity. As we expand public and social employment programs, we've been taking steps to encourage the growth of small, medium enterprises, but also to encourage the growth of cooperatives and informal businesses. And these include the expansion of the employment tax incentive to encourage small businesses to employ more people, the loan guarantee scheme that has been redesigned to provide finance to smaller businesses, and the reduction of the red tape that holds back the growth of businesses. Comrades, these are some of the practical ways in which we are both supporting livelihoods and also seeking to advance economic transformation. While economic policies and programs make an important contribution to the broader task of reducing inequality, they are not the only areas where we need to address exclusion as well as marginalization of our people. That is why, for example, we need to proceed with speed with the implementation of the National Health Insurance to ensure that all South Africans can receive quality health care regardless of their ability to pay. And in this regard, we must applaud the role that has been played by the party. Over and over and over again, the party has been advocating the implementation of the National Health Insurance. Now, I can tell you now that the National Health Insurance will be implemented. Whether they like it or not, it is going to happen. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated, on the one hand, the extent of inequality in access to health care, and on the other hand, the ability of the private and public health care to work together to confront a national health emergency. This should both motivate and encourage us to work together to implement the NHI. We have done much to address inequality in education through fee-free schools and massively expanding the provision of financial support for higher education students from poor working class families. And in this regard, without even giving him any form of praise, Comrade Blade, as Minister of Higher Education, has played a critical role in getting the young people who today receive NSFAS. He has played a critical role in getting that allocation to be raised by billions. Many of the young people who are in our higher education centers today are there because of voices and the work such as Comrade Blade and yourselves as a party, and we say thank you to that. But we need to focus greater attention on the quality of our educational outcomes and in reducing the high dropout rates in both basic and higher education. The inequality that exists across all these areas of economic and social development has a substantial gender dimension to it. Our struggle for fundamental economic and social transformation means that we must address the status of women in all areas of public and private life. Not only are women disadvantaged in access to employment, ownership, education, skills, and economic networks, but they also face discrimination in political, social, religious, traditional, domestic, and other settings. They are faced with extreme levels of gender-based violence, abuse, and femicide. The National Democratic Revolution cannot advance unless we as a society address gender inequality and relentlessly pursue the empowerment of women in all areas of life. I was most delighted, Comrade Blade, to hear you spend a big portion of your political report on the issue of the empowerment of women. I was most impressed with that. We will only be able to advance the NDR if we rid our movement of myopic gender policies. We must ensure that the empowerment of women within our own ranks, within our own structures, within government institutions is upgraded to a higher level. We will also not be able to advance the NDR if we do not rid our movement of factionalism, patronage, and corruption. We will only succeed if we end all forms of state capture and resist all efforts by those who benefit from corruption to undermine our democracy, our institutions, and our constitutional order as well. The SACP must be commended for its resolute opposition to corruption, for speaking out against state capture when many within our ranks were silent, and for remaining vigilant against any efforts to steal the resources that rightly belong to the people of South Africa. So we commend you. And in many ways, you had to pay a great deal. You took a lot of blows, a lot of punches, but you stood firm. And we thank the party for standing firm on issues of corruption. The report of the State Capture Commission has made findings that are critical of public institutions, companies, our own organization, the African National Congress. It has made damning findings against several leaders and members and has made far-reaching recommendations to ensure accountability and redress. Difficult as these findings may be, we need to see them as an opportunity to confront our own shortcomings, to address our weaknesses, and to rebuild and renew our movement. As we have correctly noted, state capture is a form of counter-revolution that directly threatens the advancement of the NDR. And it is only when we see it in this light that we will be able to take action to deal with state capture and be able to say, never, never, never again must this ever happen to this beautiful land. We have seen the intensification of counter-revolution through the destruction of state-owned enterprises, the relentless attack on institutions of democracy with the aim of rendering them powerless and irrelevant, large-scale corruption and the weakening of the ANC, resulting in a declining ability to discharge its revolutionary duties. It is in this context that we should view the orchestrated acts of public violence and the destruction of July 2021. This was a deliberate but unsuccessful effort to foment a popular insurrection against the democratic state and our constitutional order with the intention of shielding those responsible for wrongdoing from accountability. As this alliance, we need to understand that the onslaught on our democracy continues in several overt and covert forms, and we need to remain resolute in our determination to defeat each and every effort to derail the national democratic revolution. I'm rather glad that we had within our midst today Comrade Slava, who has given us a perspective at an international level of the conflict that's unfolding in the Ukraine. We were heavily criticized for the stance that we took. We, more than many other countries, were heavily criticized, even as we abstained at the UN, together with some 25 countries on our continent and many others. But we were clear that from a political point of view, the solution to this conflict should be what we were taught by the great Nelson Mandela, that the solution to conflicts is through dialogue. The solution to conflicts is through negotiation. We have continued to harp on this, even as we've either been threatened, even as we've either been blackmailed. Comrade Slava, we have remained very clear and firm because politically we are very clear about our stance, and we are not going to be moved or shifted from the stance that we have taken. As South Africa, we continue to play our role globally and internationally, not only more globally but also on our continent. We continue to advocate for the resolution of conflicts through dialogue, and where dialogue does not seem to work, we have taken steps to go, for instance, to assist our brothers and sisters in Mozambique, where they are facing insurgents who are continuing to undermine their democracy and their sovereignty. And we will continue to support our brothers and sisters in Mozambique, in Cabo Delgado, and we have deployed soldiers there, and they are fighting a good war because we must restore peace in Mozambique. Comrades, I'd like to conclude to address a matter that has concerned many people within the democratic movement and in society, a matter which is topical right now. Just over a month ago, there were criminal charges that were a complaint that was laid against me at the South African Police Service. The complaint related to a theft that was committed at my farm in February. The allegations contained in the complaint are serious, and it is only correct that they be thoroughly investigated and that the due legal process be allowed to take its course without interference. As we emerge from the era of state capture, we must be firm on the principle that no person, not a single person, is above the law, and that everyone, regardless of the position that they occupy, must be held accountable for their actions. I have pledged my full cooperation to the investigation process that is underway. I am prepared to be held accountable. I opted of my own volition to appear before the Integrity Commission. We were meant to meet a week ago, but the date did not suit everyone. We will finalize another date in days that come, and I will go before the Integrity Commission. But I would like to say I will not allow these allegations to deter me from what needs to be done to rebuild our economy. I will not allow this to deter me, to discourage me from the work that I have to do. And I will not be intimidated, nor distracted, nor bullied into submission. Now, for as long as I'm still privileged to be the President of the Republic, I will do my work, and I will continue to work alongside South Africans, working together with them to create jobs, to tackle poverty, to build safe communities, and to change the lives of our people, and also to tackle the issue of electricity in our country. I will continue to pursue far-reaching economic reforms to secure a reliable supply of affordable electricity and to end state capture and corruption. Tomorrow, I will lead a team of ministers and officials to visit one of our troubled power stations and have discussions with the workers, with the unions, and with managers, and that I want to do without being distracted. I want to do my work. For as long as also I'm president of the ANC, I will fulfill the mandate of the 54th conference to undertake and complete the fundamental renewal of our movement. The National Executive Committee is going to be meeting in special sessions in coming days to look at the extent to which we can deepen, broaden, and foster the renewal of our movement. And I will work alongside all leaders and cadres of our movement, and together with our alliance partners, to end factionalism, to end patronage and corruption. We will continue to build our branches as centers of community activism and re-establish our cadres as selfless servants of our people. As a movement and as an alliance, we will never succumb to the manipulation and disinformation, to the abuse of office, to the undermining of democratic institutions, or to the threat of violence or insurrections. We are in the fight, comrades. We are in the fight for the soul of the African National Congress. And we will not back down for fighting to ensure that the ANC is revived. We are also in the fight for the survival of our democracy. We are in the fight for the survival of our way of life, our way of doing things. We are in the fight for the well-being of our people and the progress of our nation. As we confront the challenges of the present, we would do well to recall the message of Oliver Reginald Tambo to the 7th Congress of the South African Communist Party in 1989, when he said, "Let us consolidate and strengthen our alliance and advance in concert. Let us remain vigilant and watch out for those forces who never leave the boardrooms where they studiously plot our undoing. Our victories are many and significant, but now, more than ever before, we need to defend them, that is our victories, in order to secure our offensive and ensure our advance to the victory of our revolution," close quotes. In the battles that must be fought against poverty, against inequality, against violence, against crime, against greed, against those who perpetrate violence against women and against corruption, we will not submit and we will not relent, nor will we ever give in. We will remain true to our values. We will remain devoted to our mission, and we will remain committed to the people of this country. And I know that we shall prevail. As for you as communists, you should, as Tom Lodge has written in his mammoth epic history of the SACP, which he called Red Road to Freedom. I encourage you to read that book. You must follow what he calls the Red Road, indlela ebomvu, We have a red road, and you must follow that red road. Because that red road is your journey. It is our collective journey. And as a Congress, as you go on to elect your leaders, your new leaders, and otherwise, I wish you well. I wish you strength, but above all, I wish you clarity. We rely on the South African Communist Party to be the intellectual reservoir of our movement, to come up with ideas, to be innovative, to put forward political perspectives and analyses that will help to guide our movement to move forward. So I call upon you to embark and continue on this red road that has great responsibilities on you as members of the SACP, as the communists in our country. And we put you in a high pedestal for clear reasons. Your own DNA from the very beginning has been a DNA of being progressive, of being clear, of being analytical, and we expect that you will live up to that. Thank you very much for having me here. Continue to have a great Congress. Thank you very much. Mandla.
The Chinese Communist Party is ready.
No, they said they will start with the